Okay. Hi, I'm Eric Valley-Conis from UNO's Office of Advancement, as well as a UNO alumnus. Thank you for joining UNO Alumni's virtual Meet Us At webinar series. We look forward to having a wonderful presentation this afternoon. After the presentation, we'll have a time for a question and answering session. You can also type your questions for a presenter using the chat function, and she'll try to incorporate your questions into her presentation. If she can't, she'll answer them after the presentation. We're very happy to have UNO alumna Jennifer Hyde from Northwestern Mutual with us again to share with you some information on how to achieve greater financial security. Before turning over the presentation to her, I would first like to share with you that the Advancement Alumni Office has recently partnered with a company called Free Will. Using this online resource, you have the ability to write a legally valid will, as well as an option to make an estate gift to UNO that will cost you nothing today. This service is 100% free whether or not you choose to include the gift to UNO. The website address is freewill.com/UNO, and please see the latest edition of UNO's alumni magazine, Silver and Blue, for more information. Now for today's topic, I would like to introduce you to our presenter. Jennifer graduated from the University of New Orleans with a Bachelor of Science in Marketing and Business Administration and a minor in Management. She is a financial advisor with Northwestern Mutual for more than 15 years. Jennifer provides top quality financial services to her clients and specializes in helping established professionals and small business owners meet their financial goals and educating clients on financial strategies and solutions. In this webinar, Jennifer will offer advice, tips, and resources to ensure that your finances are secure for the short term and long term. This information will help people of all age brackets create financial security in these uncertain times. Jennifer, thank you for being with us today, and it's now all yours. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. I'm very proud to be an alum of the University of New Orleans, and this is my third time speaking, first time online. So just super excited to be back. I thank all of you for attending, and I think you'll find a lot of value in today's presentation on creating greater financial security, since we all know that right now is a crazy economic time. So again, I just want to thank you all for, well, I would say coming, but I guess signing in. Again, Jennifer Hyde, Northwestern Mutual, been there for 15 years. So I've seen, unfortunately, during my short career, 3 economic downfalls. So unfortunately, I think I've got this down pat. And like Eric said, I'll be looking for questions, so go ahead and type them in at any point. If I see a lot of them, I'll go ahead and fold it into the talk. If not, I promise I will address those questions at the end. I'm sorry, are you able to see my screen, this slideshow? Hello? Okay.
I see it.
Sorry,
Thanks,
are we
Jennifer.
good? Sorry, little technical difficulties here.
We're good, let's go, we can see it.
Okay, great. So again, the topic is, I'm not able to move the screens. Sorry, guys. Do I have control? Because I'm not able to switch slides. Okay. Sorry, thank you for your patience. Okay, so on this slide, do you have a plan to reach your financial goals? What I find very interesting in the latest survey I've read, only 21% of Americans have a financial plan, but yet over 60%, actually closer to 70% of Americans feel that they would sleep better at night if they had a plan. So 21% have, 60 to almost 70% wish they had a plan. What I've heard over my 15 years is every excuse under the book why not to have a plan, but the most common is, I just don't have the time, or the timing is not right. Well, just like most things in life, the timing is never going to be right. So the best thing to do is just start working on a plan. Okay, so the next screen. like I said, go ahead and put your questions on in the chat room and I'll go ahead and address them. But the majority of individuals, like I just stated, don't feel that they have a great financial plan. So what we're looking at on this slide here, the 5 key actions for creating a financial security plan. No matter how old you are or how much money you have, you need a plan to create more financial security. And then the future financial security should include strategies to do the following 5 items. 1 is save. You can never save enough money. I've never had anybody complain to me that they don't have enough money. And when we're talking about saving money, we need to be smart, but we also need to be tax efficient. And so we have places where we can save money, like a savings account. That account is a great place to save for your rainy day fund. We're talking 3 to 6 months of living expenses, depending on your spending habits. So this way, God forbid, if lightning strikes and we're out of work like we are right now for a month, 2 months, 3 months, it's not going to feel too good, but we have access to money to keep going. So our savings account should be a liquid account. You're not going to get a return on this money, Chase, Whitney, Capital One, whomever it is. But what we really like about this account is the money is accessible. So we talk about saving for rainy day funds. Then we also talk about saving for the long term, talking about retirement. Even clients that don't want to retire, which I have a lot that don't, we still need to accept the fact that one day, hopefully not, but there's a really good chance that one day we will not be as young and healthy and able to work as hard as we can today. So even if we don't completely want to hang up work, it's a really good idea to make sure you have the assets set aside. So if the economy or health force you to stop working, everything's going to be just fine. The other thing, when we're dealing with these long-term accounts, we really need to worry about driving tax efficiency. So short-term savings, the goal is not to be really efficient, it's to be liquid. But long-term, we want to take advantage of tax benefits, and I'll get into those accounts later on in the presentation. So that's short-term, that's long-term. Then we also have midterm. So earlier I stated that you really should only have 3 to 6 months of living expenses in the bank. This is if you're still working and not in retirement, so we can access it. Once you have 6 months in a savings account, because the rate of return is less than inflation, it's a really good idea to open an investment account that is not tied to retirement. Retirement accounts, there are hurdles to getting this money out before retirement, and those are good hurdles because we want to make sure the money is there for retirement. But then we talk about a tax efficient investment account in the middle to get us from that short-term savings to retirement. There's a lot of rules of thumbs out there. A lot of books will tell you that you should save 20% of your income. Look, if you're not saving anything, I'm a big fan of, putting that 20% down. But I think what actually makes a lot more sense is figuring out how much you do need to save. I have clients that are super frugal and barely spend any money. And then I have clients that spend almost everything they make. So it's a good idea to figure out what percent of your own income is appropriate for your own goals. So once we know how much we need to save, then we can do what every American loves to do, and that is spend. But when we're spending, we need to be smart. We have our fixed expenses and our fun expenses. But so long as we save off the top, we can go ahead and spend everything else. We do not want to be those individuals that say, well, I'm going to save whatever is left over every month, because there's never anything left over. If we save 5%, 10%, 20% off the top, even if savings is a new habit that we're trying to create, the first couple months, you're not going to like it. It's less money, but you will adjust. And I find that my clients ultimately just fold that savings in. So that's save. We talked about spend. Now grow. Grow is obviously not the savings account, right? Because that rate of return is less than inflation. But this is talking about that middle investment account where we're just acquiring assets in a tax efficient account, perhaps, or just one that's in the stock market for the opportunity to have higher gains. And then again, that third step of retirement. Now, when we're talking about that middle investment account, we need to be we need to understand that the majority of the assets in this account are going to be subject to market risk. So last I looked, which was a few minutes before this presentation started, the stock market was down significantly. So when we're looking at these accounts, we need to understand that they will be down. And that's another reason why that short-term savings is good, is so when your investment account is down, we do not liquidate those investments. If we sell when we're down, we can never recoup our money. So we go to the short-term savings. So essentially, even though we have short, mid, and long-term savings, they all work together in synergy. So growing the money in those investment accounts. The fourth step of a strong financial security plan, and I would actually argue it's the first one, is protecting our income. Our income is what pays for everything: the mortgage, the rent, the utilities, the education, the fun stuff, the taking the grandkids to Disney World, you know. So if we lose our income or our ability to lose an income, there is no way a financial plan is going to keep moving. I know that talking about insurance and spending money on insurance is never high on people's priorities, maybe mine, but you know, looking at life insurance, disability insurance, if there's people that are relying on you to support them financially, children, parents, in-laws, outlaws, whomever, if you lose your income, you have the same expenses as yesterday, plus all future expenses. A lot of employers do provide in their employee benefit package life insurance and disability insurance. I always encourage my clients to sign up for them, as those are typically free plans, but it's not going to protect you 100%. Just like your 401k is great, it's not going to fill 100% of your retirement bucket. So there's usually some planning that needs to be done in the private market to ensure that your income is fully protected for you and your loved ones, and so your plans do not derail. Give, that's the last step of a strong financial plan. And you know, over my career, I've worked with individuals that are just starting out, and I'll have a lot of clients in their 80s, 90s that are in retirement. And what's interesting is the older we get, the more we want to leave a legacy. We want to leave a legacy to our institution, like the University of New Orleans. We want to leave a legacy to our children. We want to leave a legacy to an association, to a church, to a synagogue. I do find that as clients get older, the act of giving and leaving a legacy becomes extremely important. So when we're early on and saving for retirement, or in just getting through life, or kids' private school education, the goal is to just accumulate as much money as possible. But there may be some tax efficient strategies that we can implement during our working career, so we can have a nice legacy bucket to give to, say, a UNO, a church, a synagogue. And so I'll go to the next slide. Well, the next slide, I'm sure, okay, there we go. So again, we're just gonna talk more about saving. You know, so what are we saving for? Everybody has different goals, everybody has different priorities. Some have 2-income households, some have 1-income households. So what's good for your neighbor may not be good for you. You're not sure of what the tax consequences are with their income, they're not sure of yours. So it's a good idea to just focus on what your goals are. If we are talking about something in the short term, so short term, when reading books, you're going to hear, you know, it's really 1 year. Maybe I'm a little too conservative, but I think that if we're talking about a financial goal within 1 to 3 years, or, you know, 1 month to 3 years, we need to be super, super safe with that money. Because as you can see right now, I mean, the stock market is just simply schizophrenic. Up 200, down 400, up 100. So if it's a short-term goal, you know, I would feel terrible investing my clients' money in the stock market for a house they want to buy 1 year from now, and the market tanks, and that is no longer an option for them. So short-term goals, even though you're not making much of a return in that savings account, you really want to use something liquid, like a savings account, a money market. You know, pre the crash in 2008, money markets were paying about 5%, and I've been telling my clients since the market crash in 2008 that once this market rebounds, rates will probably get back there. I was wrong. They've basically been the same as savings accounts the whole way. So if I had to choose, I'd probably just open the savings account, because it's less paperwork than the money market, and you're not really getting that much more of a return. So short term, we really want to look at just savings. Long term, like retirement, let's go ahead and get into the stock market. There's different levels of risk you can take when saving or investing in the stock market, because my level of risk may be different for you. So we can go super risky to super conservative, knowing that there is always some chance that you could lose your money. When looking at the stock market, the question you have to ask yourself is, can I ride out any losses? The way I view the stock market is it's like the stock market's a yo-yo. So picture somebody walking up the steps with a yo-yo. The yo-yo goes up and down, up and down, up and down, but ultimately that yo-yo is going to go up. But this is why we need to talk about time frame. You know, if it's 10 years, we can ride those ups and downs. If it's a 1-year goal, you know, we cannot. One big thing I get from my clients is talking about education. You know, most of us, I think, are in New Orleans or surrounding area right now, and the cost of, you know, education up to grade 12 is just, it's through the roof, and then you have college too. So what can we do to either put some money away for our children so they're not strapped with student loan debt? And, you know, I have a lot of clients that say they want their kids to have some skin in the game. They're not willing to pay 100%, say, for their college education. So then at that point, you put some money away, but now we also need to get some, you know, tuition assistance for the children. But at the end of the day, the goal is to just build up a nice savings to make sure that you are really secure. So then with that, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so again, here we're talking about the short term, the midterm, and the long term. And then think about what your future will look like in 5, 10, 20, 30 years. I'm going to focus more on the long term here, because the short term I think we've pretty much covered. Do that for liquidity, low rate of return. We just accept it because we want liquidity. But when we're talking about the long term, there are some questions you should be asking yourself. One, where will you live? The cost of living in different parts of this country or world are extremely different. The cost of living in New Orleans to San Francisco to New York to Omaha, those are going to vary. So we need to look at the cost of living, you know, if we're going to have rent or a mortgage, you know, going out to eat, school for our children, and then most importantly, taxes. You know, there are 9 states out there that do not have income tax, Florida being one. That's why it's, you know, retirement paradise. But when we're thinking about, you know, how long our money is going to last us, knowing what the cost of living in an area where you want to go is extremely important. The other thing I've noticed over the last few years in dealing with retirees is, you know, when we have a 401k, so we're putting our money into our 401k and we're getting a tax break for doing that, right? I make 100,000, I put 10 in the 401k, my taxable income is 90,000. That's a very simple explanation. Those dollars are now going to grow tax deferred, and when we take them out, they are going to be taxable. So if you live in a low income tax state when you're saving for retirement and then move to a high income tax state, you need to be aware that a greater chunk of your 401k withdrawals are going to taxes. If we live in a high income tax state like Louisiana, and say we then retire to Florida, our money is going to last longer because we don't have income taxes. But what I have seen a lot of states do, I know Mississippi's jumped on board, Michigan's jumped on board, is they actually give some additional tax benefits to retirees for moving there. So last I read, a retiree that moves to Michigan, the first $100,000 of income in retirement from a 401k withdrawal is not going to be taxable. So again, we want to look at what the cost of living of where we're going. The other thing is people move around, right? Families are spread out. I grew up in New Jersey. I moved to New Orleans when I was 17 in 1998. My brother moved to San Francisco. Then mom and dad retired to Florida. So we're spread out. So now in order to get together for Sunday dinner, there's a little bit more expense than driving down the road. There's airfare, there's taking time off of work. So taking the logistical considerations of where you want to live and where your loved ones are is extremely important as well when we talk about cost. You know, what will your family look like? Like I said, a lot of families move. In my family, we just don't tend to procreate. There's actually not one child after my generation. It's small and easy for family vacations, but some families are super huge, 8 to 9 kids. Well, if you want to take your grandkids to Disney World and you have 2 kids, that's a lot less expensive than 9. So we need to be realistic about what these expenses are going to be for just the size of the family. The other thing is, are there any individuals that have a special need? Do I have a child with a special need, or that child, at the age of 50 is still going to need support? So what money needs to be set aside to make sure that that child is going to be taken care of? And the thing is, if I'm setting money aside for my special needs child, that's super expensive. What am I doing for my own retirement? So there's a very tricky balance of how we can make the money work for them and ourselves. What a lot of individuals don't realize, in order to qualify for government assistance for a special needs child, and again, I say child, but special needs child can be from age 0 to 60, is there are a lot of government benefits out there, and pretty much everybody will need them because it's very expensive when there's special needs. And a lot of my clients want to take their retirement benefits early because once they take their retirement Social Security, their special needs child is eligible for benefits. The problem if we do that is we've now just hurt our own retirement picture because we've pulled our retirement Social Security early and we're locked in at a lower rate. So we want to put a plan together that's going to protect our family, but that's also going to protect us because there are no loans for retirement. So whatever's in the bucket, that's in the bucket. And as we all know, I think it's 2033, Social Security is able to pay 75 cents on the dollar, and Social Security tax dollars that come back to you are taxed. So we need to figure out the correct balance there when looking at our family. The other consideration, what are the big purchases you hope to make in the short term and the long term? We all know when you buy a house, the first thing that happens is everything breaks. So we need to make sure there's money set aside for that. Some of us have a desire to buy a boat. Spending money is not always about the things that we need, but my goal for my clients is to say, look, you're living now. So we need to squirrel some, nuts away for the future, but we also need to enjoy our lifestyle today. So what would make your life complete for, on the fun side and on the luxury side? And let's figure out how much we need to save every year and in what bucket save to get there. Because again, we also need to spend our life living. How will you spend your free time? When I started my career 15 years ago, the way of thinking about retirement was when I go to retirement, I'm going to have lower income and therefore my taxes are going to be reduced. Well, I've got news for you. That's not the case at all. When we look at how much debt this country has, and now especially after the last month, taxes are going to have to go up. I just don't know how it's possible to pay all of this down without taxes going up. And the other thing is, when you're retired, every single day is Saturday, and Saturday is the day you spend the most money. So what I've actually seen with my clients over the last few years is instead of needing 80% of their pre-retirement income like they did when I started my career, they need 100 or more % of their income. People are living longer, they're healthier, they're more active. So I want everybody to live a long, healthy life, but we need to also accept that every year we're alive, there is an expense for that. So thinking about how you want to spend your free time. I have some clients that, they boat and they hunt and they golf and they travel. And so there's these super expensive hobbies, and if you've been enjoying those hobbies for 20 years and now you go to retirement, you're clearly going to want to still enjoy them. And then I have some clients that, they're very happy just having a picnic in the park with the family or going on a bike ride. So again, everybody's desires are a little bit different, but thinking about how you're going to spend your free time is extremely important because your free time is where you spend your money. Another consideration is, will it be important for you to financially support causes that you believe in? I have a lot of clients where every year they want to give a certain amount of money to certain organizations. I know Juvenile Diabetes Research Fund is a nonprofit that my heart, falls for. So I donate a little bit to them each year. But, being an alum of UNO, my goal is, at the end, I would like to leave a nice gift to UNO to say thank you for, giving me this wonderful foundation throughout my life and the opportunity for this great career. So if our goal is to leave a legacy, we need to figure out how much money we need to put in that pot today so it can grow to be the amount that we do want to leave it. And it just comes down to what's important to you. So my mentor and second father unfortunately passed away a month ago from COVID, and his obituary he wrote, and I thought it was amazing. In the obituary, he said, you know, a lot of times they say in lieu of flowers, give money to American Heart Association or yada, yada, yada. He put in there to give money to a cause you think is important. So it's important to make sure that the money that you're giving to a cause is something that you really, you know, truly feel passionate about. Again, I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm just gonna keep on rolling. But it's a good idea to just sit down and just write down your goals for that short term, you know, for the midterm and for the long term. And especially if you have a spouse or a partner, it's a good idea to have that conversation together to make sure you're on the same page. The first way you start a plan is just by starting the conversation. I have a lot of individuals say to me when I call them that they're just not sure what their goals are. And you know what, that's perfectly fine. Maybe there aren't any goals. Maybe the goal is to just make sure we maintain the same lifestyle we have, and that's perfectly acceptable. But the first thing you do is just start and think and write those goals down. So on that, I'll jump to the next slide. Okay, so again, we talked a little bit earlier about how much money should we save. And like I said, you know, books will tell you, they will tell you that you should put 20% into savings and investing, 20% to discretionary, so that's our fun, and then 60 to essential. Essential expenses include rent or mortgage, utilities, phone, food, the things we just cannot live without. Again, I think if you're doing nothing, these are great numbers. Let's go with 20%. But I think if you sat down and figured out what your real goals are, what your real lifestyle needs to look like, you might find that you only need to save 15%. And now you've got some extra money to do something with. So it's a good idea to sit down with a financial advisor and figure out what exactly those amounts are. So, you know, again, generally speaking, allocate 20% to savings, but let's go find out what the real number is. An easy way to boost your savings, if you can't do the 20%, which I know a lot of people can't, especially right now, some people aren't even working, is just come up with a number that's doable and meaningful. If you're gonna save $10 a month, don't bother. If it's $50 a month, $100 a month, $200 a month, go ahead and do that. And then either every few months, up that amount by 1%, or when you get your cost of living raises at work, go ahead and increase it then. Nobody ever starts at the top. I mean, nobody started University of New Orleans, you know, with a complete college education. We had to all walk in there on day one and just start learning, and we eventually got to the degree. It's the same thing with savings. You just got to start. So put that 5% away, and then once you get accustomed to that amount coming out of your checking account, go ahead and increase it to 6 to 7. The great thing about savings and investing, well, it's kind of a double-edged sword. The great thing is it's not required. So if I'm saving 20% of my income and then boom, I lost my job, well, guess what? I don't need to keep saving the 20%. It's not there. We can let these numbers fluctuate. Maybe right now my hours have been cut down in half, and so I only want to save, you know, 10%. We can go change this number. The important thing is as you're making more money, is you keep some of your raises and you save some of your raises. Because I have a lot of people that come to me that are 60 to 62 years old, tell me they want to retire when they're 65, and the only thing they have is their 401k. And it's not a fun conversation. It's really not. So if you just start increasing it, eventually you hit your goal. You'll feel it in the wallet in the beginning, I promise you, but maybe you just have a couple less bottles of wine throughout the month, and then you adjust. So with that, we'll go to the next screen. So on this screen, we're talking about where we can put our money. So, and we talked a little bit about this before. So the short term, we're looking at cash, checking, and savings account. As we know, those rates of returns are just deplorable. So this is really just a holding tank. This is don't spend me, my transmission might break, my kid might fall, whatever, I need a new roof, I'm out of work. So we're not trying to make money here. The rate of return and savings and checking, it might even be negative. I have no idea right now. But the thing you need to think about when looking at rate of returns is, where is inflation? So right now, inflation is about 2%, and that's very healthy. When I do analysis for clients, I use 3%. The reason why I use 3% for inflation is most of our goals are long-term, and the long-term average for inflation is 3%. So if I'm getting 1% in my savings and inflation's at 3%, I'm losing money. But again, that's our holding tank. It's going to be there. Cash is king. I can tell you, my clients with a lot of liquidity in the month of March made a lot of investments. The goal is to buy low and sell high. So the more liquid you are, the more opportunities you have. Plus, if you're a business owner and you have a good amount of liquidity, when everything goes to hell in a handbasket, there might be some opportunities you can pick up. So this is our emergency fund, our opportunity fund. The midterm, like we talked about earlier, this is looking at an investment account. This investment account may be super, super conservative. So what's going to happen is we're going to go up and down in the market, but we're going to kind of stay like this. If we want to be more aggressive, we're going to go more like this in the market. So the conversation you have with yourself is, how much can my gut handle? And is this really midterm money, or is this short-term money? And that's something that a financial advisor can help you figure out. What we do in situations like this is actually make you take a test, and it's to figure out your risk tolerance to determine how we set up a portfolio for you. So when the market does go like this, it's going to hurt in your gut, but it's not going to change your plans. So long term, here's where we really need to focus on being tax efficient. Again, the odds of taxes being up in less than 20 years is pretty good. So if we have a bucket of money where we can withdraw money tax-free, we are going to be in a much better position than our friends that do not. So unfortunately, I have bad news. There's not many places you can go and get tax-free. We have Roth IRAs, one of the best things in sliced bread. A Roth IRA, you earn money, you pay taxes on that money, and then you take your after-tax earnings and put it into a Roth IRA. You are in the stock market. Again, we can have different levels of risk, super conservative, super risky, all depends on what you're comfortable with. So after-tax money goes into Roth. This money is going to grow tax-free, and it comes out tax-free. Sounds great. Well, the more successful we get in life, this bucket is taken off the table. I'm full disclosure, I'm not a CPA. I just know a silly bit about taxes. But what the government does is they put restraints. So right now, I believe it's $190,000. If our household adjusted gross income is $190 or above, you are not able to do a Roth. That's for married people. Single people, it's about $119,000. So it's the best thing since sliced bread, but the more successful you get, this bucket comes off the table. So let's say you qualify today, and so we start putting money there, and then in 5 years, the income's too high. You can still keep that bucket. It can go up and down in the market. We can rebalance. You just can't put more money into it. The other tax-free option we have are muni bonds. Well, this is a complete waste of time right now as well, because the rate of return on them is lower than inflation. So great, we're saving taxes, but we're not making a return. The third bucket is actually cash value life insurance. A lot of people snub their nose at cash value life insurance, and the reason being really just see stock company portfolios out there. There are two kinds of insurance companies. We have stock and we have mutual, both good, both different. Stock company has two people they need to be concerned about. One is the policyholder, the second is the shareholder. Unfortunately, this is a conflicting relationship because the shareholder with any publicly traded company takes precedence. So a lot of these contracts that are put in place through stock companies, what's happening is those returns are being sent to Wall Street. So the policyholders are not really participating in earnings. A mutual company is owned and operated by its policyholders. They are not on Wall Street. You cannot buy shares of them. So Northwestern Mutual is mutual. After Northwestern pays me, reinvests in the company, contributes to the society, all the proceeds that are left over get sent to policyholders in the form of a dividend. What's going to happen is this dividend gets paid to the life insurance contract, and it sits in a savings bucket. So it's not tied to the stock market. That contract value is not going to go up and down, up and down. Once the money is in, it's in. It's tax deferred growth. And then it's actually going to be tax-free growth if you leave life insurance in place when you take withdrawals. That conversation could take a whole nother 2 hours. So I'll just summarize again. For our tax-free for the long term, you have muni bonds, you have Roth IRA, and cash value life insurance. That's pretty much it. And then also on the long term, we're talking about tax efficiency. And these plans a lot of you are going to be familiar with, dealing solely with retirement. We have 401k, traditional IRA. Traditional IRA and Roth IRA, the rules are very similar on income. Adjusted gross income is a little different. The amount, that for the sake of this conversation, once you hit certain income levels, you're no longer to contribute. You can keep the bucket, you just can't put more money into it. And then an annuity. So annuities are amazing, especially when we look at what life expectancy is. So you're going to think I'm crazy, but if you were to buy a life insurance policy today, premiums are technically due until you're age 121. I designed plans to have them paid up by retirement, but it just shows you that when we look at a child being, a baby born today, that life expectancy is super, super long. Every year we're alive, we need more and more money. If we want $100,000 a year in retirement and we live to 90 or we live to 100, that's a big discrepancy. So the benefit of an annuity is it pays lifetime income. Those Social Security retirement benefits, that's an annuity. That's actually the best performing annuity in the market. Every year we wait to pull our Social Security, our benefit is going to grow 7 to 8% up until the age of 70, and then it stops growing. But that check comes in no matter how long you're alive. So when I'm meeting with individuals that are 10 years, 5 years from retirement, and that's really where it gets serious, we need to figure out what is our fixed cost of living, taxes, insurance, food, what do we need every single month just to survive? And between their Social Security check and an annuity, my goal is to make that amount come in. So for example, if we need $5,000 a month to live and Social Security is going to give us $2,500, I then come up with an annuity that's going to generate $2,500 a month for my client. So this way, when the money in their 401k goes down due to a market crash, we've still got that $5,000 a month coming in. So again, looking at these 401ks go down and hurt in the gut, but since you have this annuity coming in every single month, you're not going to change your plans. Just to give you, there's a lot of confusion on this lifetime income. So let's say I have $100,000 in a mutual fund account, or stocks, whatever. I have one option, and that is to spend my money. Well, if I have $100,000 in an annuity, I have two options. One is I can just take all my money and spend it, or I can turn it into an income stream for life. So you do an annuity for the income stream. So I'm 65, I decide to take my $100,000, have it pay me an income stream for life. Well, what do you know? I've recouped my $100,000 and I keep living. They keep paying. You'll never run out of money. You might not have enough money in the bucket to do everything you want, so buyer beware, but at least we know that no matter what happens to the economy, our fixed expenses are going to be covered every month. So that's usually the best strategy to employ. We want to take advantage of tax benefits today, like the 401k, right? I'm working, my spouse is working, our incomes are high. I'd like to reduce some of that and save money. Totally get it. But we need to have foresight as well. And so again, looking at how much debt this country has, I wouldn't just be focused on reducing my tax liability today. I actually put a lot more weight on where tax liability is going to be in the future. I think the highest tax rate in our history was 92%. And I don't know where it's going, but I just think if a smart financial plan is going to take advantage of tax benefits today, but it's also going to diversify our taxes in the future by putting some of these tax-free plan tools rather in place. Okay, So on that, we'll go to the next slide. So the next slide is dealing with your 401k. I believe the average American stays in a job for 7 years. So a lot of people tell me that they never started their 401k because they didn't think they were going to be there, or they didn't know how it was going to work. Individuals that leave a job before vesting, which is usually 6 to 7 years, don't get to keep all of their employer contributions, as I'm sure some of you have seen. So what happens where, I'm at a job and it's time to move to the next one? What do I do with my 401k? Well, you have a few options. The first option is you can leave it there. And that's very common. The second option is you can roll it over to your new employer's plan. The third and best option, usually, not always, but the third and best option is to transfer that into an IRA. Reason being is when I work on the business side of financial planning too. So, XYZ law firm, I'm putting a 401k in place for the lawyers, for the staffs, yada, yada, yada. Well, the more options we make available, the more expenses, right? Nothing's free. So typically an employer retirement plan is going to give you 16 to 32 options to choose from. The federal government does not allow annuities in plans. I know that they're trying to change that, but so there's currently no lifetime income option in a 401k. When you are with an employer, and every plan's a little different, so you have to look at the exact rules for your specific 401k, but usually you are not allowed to take money out while you are still employed there. Sometimes you can take a hardship withdrawal or a loan. It depends how the employer wants to set them up. I have some employers that say, yeah, I'll let my people take money out, and I have some that just say no. So you have to really know your specific plan. But the problem with taking my previous employer's 401k and rolling it into the new employer 401k is if I want to maybe not fully retire, but ease off, maybe cut my hours in half, and therefore I'm going to need to supplement my income with some of this 401k savings, well, guess what? I can't, because I'm still employed there. And diversification is key. So I think rolling the old 401k to the new 401k is generally not the best approach. The benefits of rolling it into an IRA, an individual retirement account, is one, now we have the entire market to choose from. So instead of 16 to 32 investments, we now have everything available to us. Again, buyer beware. Some years ago, we had a bill passed that limits the investments that can go into a retirement account in the IRA market. And what it really comes down to is those investments that have super high expenses are not eligible. So there's a fun list, but that list is extensive. The other reason why it's advantageous a lot of times to roll your old 401k into an IRA is you can use the annuity option. So I can definitely tell you a lot of my clients in their 30s and 40s, when they leave an employer, we're taking maybe not all of the money, but some of the money and putting it into an annuity so we can create their own Social Security check. So the reduction with the Social Security check they're going to get, this annuity will layer on top and sort of replace that. So it's a balancing act, and everybody's plan is different. And so that's why, it's smart to sit down with an advisor and look at the different consequences of leaving the money, putting it into the new 401k or an IRA. The last option is cash it out, and do not do that. Do not do that. So if we take money out of a retirement account before the age of 59 and a half, that money gets added to our income. So I made $100,000 this year. I closed out a $50,000 401k. My taxable income is $150,000. Oh, and the IRS is going to charge you a 10% penalty because this money was for retirement and you took it earlier. Everybody on this call, I'm sure, has different tax rates, and I'm not about to get into that discussion. But so rule of thumbs, we know how I love rule of thumbs. You really, if you cash out your retirement account too early, you're probably going to lose about 18% of your money. So, and then not only are you going to lose that money today, but you also do not have that money in retirement, and there are no loans for retirement. So whatever you have, you have. So that would be the last, if you need it and you're destitute, by all means, it's there. But usually it's a good idea to talk to a financial advisor and see if there's somewhere we can find some money. Usually I can find a couple dollars in somebody's budget to prevent them from having to dip into that 401k when they roll over. But another thing to look out for if you do change jobs, so a lot of employers, because they want their people to contribute to the 401k, will automatically enroll them. What I've been seeing over the last few years with these automatic enrollments is the contribution level for the employee is 1 to 2%. So you may have been at XYZ law firm yesterday where you were saving, 5–10% into your 401k. You go to this new law firm, you see there's automatic enrollment, and you think you're good. You may find that you're actually saving a lot less money. So just make sure if there's automatic enrollment that the percent of your income you want going in is going in. And then the other thing is, every year, if you can save a little bit more, go ahead and do that. And then with that, we'll go to the next slide. So we've covered save. So next up is spend. Planning and managing expenses is essential to financial success. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It matters how much money you keep. I have clients that don't really make that much money and they have huge savings. I have clients that make a ridiculous amount of money and there's no savings. If I spend what I make or more, I'll never have any savings. So by spending wisely, you can, you can afford the things you need, effectively manage your debt, like student loans, credit card debt, and still have cash for what you want left over. Debt's a big deal. Student loan debt, I get it. It's not fun, but it's a gray cloud. It's not a black cloud. It gives you the opportunity for your career. Mortgage debt, gray cloud, not black cloud. You're building equity. We're going to have money for the future. The thing we have to do, is just make sure we're staying within our means. And a financial advisor can help you figure out how much you should allocate towards debt and how much to savings. I look at interest rates. I see I'm against the clock, so I'm going to start speeding it up. But I can be contacted at any time. I'll give you my information. So if there's anything y'all want me to talk about that I'm not able to get done in the next 12 minutes, I'm always here. And clearly I have no plans for the rest of my life like a lot of you. So more than happy to address it after the fact if we run out of time today. But again, in summary, we want to look at interest rates. You don't want to focus all of your money on spending down debt now, because then as much as compounding interest on debt is painful, if you're not saving, you're missing out on that compounding interest that's building you wealth. So it's just a matter of finding the healthy balance. So with that, we will go to the next screen, which you want to take inventory, money coming in versus money coming out. My clients, when we first meet, before they're clients, I give them homework and they do not like it. And that homework is our budget. It's hard to figure out how much money we have if we don't know what we're spending. So, and again, if anybody contacts me, I can get you a form to fill out, going through. What I recommend individuals do when figuring out what their budget is looking at the last 3 months of spending behaviors. How much did I spend on groceries each month for the last 3 months? How much did I spend on personal care? How much did I spend on travel or yada, yada, yada? The reason why I say look at 3 months is because sometimes there's some anomalies, like for example, March 2020 or, December, we have holidays. So look at the last 3 months and I'll give you a good average of what you're spending. The other reason why I like the budget is the number one objection I get for saving or investing is I don't have any money. Well, I guarantee you, if I get a hold of somebody's budget, I can find a few $100s of waste. Going to Starbucks every single day is not a good financial plan. $5 a day or more on coffee times $365. Boom, we almost just maxed out our IRA for the year. So it's a good exercise. It's kind of a slap in the face. So again, I get a lot of pushback when I give this homework that almost 100% of people say they're glad they went through the process. So just spending wisely starts with knowing where the money is, where it's coming from. Some expenses are short-lived, some are long-lived. Again, and if anybody would like tools, to help figure out your budget, just contact me or UNO, and I'll be more than happy to get those to you. Jumping ahead, so the next is freeing up money and managing debt. So another option is to free up money you can put towards savings. And this is usually the money I find in the budget that's being wasted. And sorry, Starbucks and CC's, it's usually you guys that miss out. We take that money and put it to savings. So if you, it's not a bad idea to have some debt, right? And it builds up credit, and you have debt like a mortgage where you're building equity. It's just a matter of making sure we can responsibly handle that debt. We want our debt to be lower than our income. You know, not all debt is created equal. You know, some of it's going to make money. So again, we don't want to say all debt is bad, but credit card debt is bad. So again, we just want to balance our debt and our spending. So with that, we'll jump to the next slide on credit card debt. So set a goal to pay off all credit card debt in a matter of 5 years. There's some tricks out there that I give clients, which I'd be happy to go over, but credit card debt's an example of bad debt because the interest rates are typically very high. I mean, they can go up to 29%. So if credit card debt is one of the first, that is one of the first things we want to tackle. And the goal should pay it all off within 5 years. When you go into retirement, you do not want any debt. Whatever money you have is all you have. So if you're paying credit card debt at 29% interest, that's impacting your standard of living greatly. We want to look at the interest rate. So if I have 8% on one card and 29% on the other, I'm throwing the minimum to my 8% and I'm throwing as much as I can to the 29%. Smaller balances are not what you want to pay off first. It's the higher interest rate is what you want to pay off first. And then once you've paid that debt off, guess what? You're used to not having that money. So now that's money we can go ahead and save. So going to the next slide, loan forgiveness. Now, these plans started in 2007. So the first round of forgiveness was 2017. I've heard a lot of horror stories. You have to play by the rules exactly. I know that, and there might be some changes that I'm not aware of in the last year on these programs. But essentially, you have to make consecutive payments, 120 payments. So that's 10 years of payments, and then they forgive what's left over. My understanding is if you miss one payment, game over, the loan's not going to be forgiven. So you really want to make sure that you understand the criteria for these loan forgiveness plans. Consolidation, I'm not opposed to it, but you know, buyer beware. If I have a loan at 6%, a loan at 7%, and I consolidate and it's at 7%, that might not be the best thing because now I just up my 6% by 1%. The other thing is a lot of these consolidation companies are for profit. So how are they making money? Are there fees? You want to make sure there are any fees, you know them. I would say most commonly what I see is the interest rate goes down, but the pay period is extended. And I've seen with a lot of clients, they actually end up paying more. I am not endorsing SoFi. I was fortunate where I didn't have student loan debt, but I have had a lot of clients go to SoFi to consolidate, and they've said it's a good experience. Again, I'm not telling you they're good, they're bad, I really don't know, but I've had a lot of clients say it was worthwhile. So if you can get a lower interest rate, go ahead and do it, because at the end of the day, that's gonna make sense. But again, make sure the term of the pay period is not so long that you end up paying more. Also, if you can overpay, if it's a high interest rate, go ahead and do it. If it's a low interest rate, like 3%, don't overpay. That's free money. You'd be better off investing. That being said, debt is also emotional. So when we're talking about financial planning, we need to balance math and emotion. So I have some clients that say, look, I know my mortgage is super low and I could do better investing it. I just can't sleep at night knowing there's red on my balance sheet. So sometimes we just need to make emotional decisions, but I think it's better to find out, you know, what the math is, meet with an advisor, do it on yourself, figure out what the math is, and then determine what's best for your situation. But debt, like credit card debt, needs to go away. That being said, let's go ahead and jump on to the next slide, which managing mortgage debt. My clients that are younger, do not overpay, because if the rate's 3%, 4%, and we can make 8% in the market over 3 years, or 7% over 30 years, excuse me, or 7%, you're much better paying your minimum mortgage payment and investing the difference. That being said, my clients going into retirement, and going into retirement is 5 to 10 years before retirement. We got to get this baby gone. You don't want any debt in retirement. You know, if I have to pay $1,500 a month to my mortgage in retirement, that's $1,500 less I have to live on. It's $1,500 less I have in the market earning interest. So younger people, don't overpay it. You're better off investing. But if you are approaching retirement, it's a good idea to throw as much money at this mortgage as you can, so your fixed costs are lower in retirement. The other thing is, you know, younger, you know, if you're paying interest, it's bad, but that interest deduction, you know, if you pay your mortgage off and you lose that, that's something that might be helping you as well. So another reason to meet with an advisor, just to see what's best for you, because again, what's best for you may not be best for your neighbor. You don't know their income, their taxes, their kids, in-laws, outlaws they're paying for. So it's a good idea to just find that healthy balance for your personal situation. So then the next slide, what we're doing is we're talking about growing money. So as you take steps to better manage your debt, you may be freeing up dollars you can use to help fund other goals. Like I said earlier, when you're done paying this credit card debt, boom, we've got money, we can go ahead and save it. So what do we do with found money? Which, that's cute, found money, it's actually your money. But you might be tempted to put it all to paying down debt. And like I said earlier, we need to find the balance with the interest rates to see really what's best for you in the long run. So at the end of the day, the best thing to do is just, again, what's the interest rate on the debt? What's the interest rate on my investments? And to be honest with you, with the majority of my clients, it's not one or the other. We do some debt, we do some savings. And again, looking at the highest interest rates first. But number one is, you know, when I have a client who's done paying down debt, or we're in the process of paying it down, that emergency fund, that savings account for 3 to 6 months, that's the first bucket you need to fill up as you're paying down debt. Because if you don't, what's going to happen is you're going to fall right back in debt. The transmission's going to break, the kid's going to fall off the bike, something like that. So you want to pay off debt, build up the emergency fund, so you don't just keep cycling through this debt lifestyle. On the next slide, we're talking about investing. So investing, you know, again, what's your goal? So is it short, mid, long term? What's your risk tolerance? You know, are you that person that's okay with that little green square on the roulette table at the casino? Put it all on green, let's see what happens. Or do you want to spread that risk out? Again, every financial professional should be putting you through what we call an investment questionnaire to figure out what your risk tolerance is. You don't want to leave it up to them to say, oh, well, you seem middle of the ground. You know, we really need to, that's more of a science, figure out what your score is. And then again, the time horizon, like I said earlier, short term, you need to be careful because the stock market can crash. If I had a crystal ball and I knew what the stock market was going to do, I can guarantee you I'd be on a beach somewhere. But we don't. So we need to plan smartly based on our time horizon to make sure those assets are available when we need them. So whether you're a seasoned investor or someone who's relatively new, making investment choices that are right for you, based largely on the way you answer 3 questions, is how you're going to start. So start by listing your goal, you know, please excuse me, hold on. And then the 3 questions are, how much risk are you willing to take? How comfortable are you with market swings? So like, it hurts in my gut, but I don't really care. I know the market's going up, or I just can't stand to lose my money. You know, where do you fall? The other question, how many years do you have to invest the money before it's needed? So again, that, you know, if the market crashes, do we have enough time to rebound, right? So that's our investment time horizon. The longer the time horizon, the more you may be able to handle some risk. If the stock market dips, you can afford to wait, but some people can't. So that time horizon is extremely important. So really you want to just talk about risk tolerance, time horizon, and then just personally how you can handle those market swings. That being said, we need to then talk about, on the next slide, it goes through asset allocation. So where do we put our money? You know, diversification is key. if I have all of my money in Tesla and Elon Musk comes on the news today and says the stock's not priced right and it tanks, my entire net worth has just tanked. So we want to make sure we spread our money out. Typically, stocks and bonds have an inverse relationship. So we want to put money, so when this account's down, this one's up. When this one's down, this one's up. And then we also have our safe money, going back to earlier in the presentation. So the safe money never falls. So therefore, if my investments are down, I can pull that safe money up. So it's just a matter of figuring out the asset allocation. An asset allocation is not one and done. I don't meet with my investment advisor, figure out my asset allocation, and then see him 20 years later when I want to retire. What we need to do is every single year go back and rebalance that account. So let's say my risk tolerance says I should put 20% of my money in 5 different buckets. Well, at the end of the year, one of those buckets is now valued at 40%. The next bucket is valued at 2% and 5%. You see where I'm going. So what we need to do is go in and chop everything back down to 20%, take our winnings from some investments and sprinkle them back in. When the market crashed in 2008, what I noticed when I looked at my investment clients, the ones that did reviews with me, where there was rebalancing, they lost money during that time. They got it back, but they went down, but they did not fall as much as my clients that didn't do reviews with me, where there was no rebalancing going on. So it's very important that you look at these accounts. Not every day you'll drive yourself crazy. Quarterly is a good idea, semi-annually or annually. The closer you are to your goal, whether that's retirement or purchase or whatever, you need to put a lot more time on that. My clients that are 5 years out from retirement, we need to look at these investment accounts quarterly, sometimes even more than that. But you don't want to rebalance too often. Your investments are down, you rebalance, you might not give yourself a rebound. So like in March, when everything started crumbling, the advice I gave to individuals was, if you're in the market, just stay there. We might want to do some rebalancing, but probably best to do nothing. If you've never gone in the market, boy, hopefully there's never a good time like this. What I've learned in my career is investments are the only purchase people like to do when it's expensive. You know, people like to buy suits and shoes on sale, but for some reason they like to buy investments high and sell low. So we want to make sure that we have the right approach on where our money is going and when we're going to need it. You know, sometimes investments do well and sometimes not so much. And that's why investing is risky. We just don't know. But if you have the right asset allocation, it is not going to prevent you from losing your money, but it sure is not going to help. So that being said, we'll jump to the next slide, protect. And this is what we talked about before. You know, we've covered save, spend, and grow. We need to protect our income. So when we look at taking another look at our goals that, or your goals that you've noted down, what would happen if you lost your paycheck? How would these goals be funded? How is your retirement funded if you're not earning an income? How is your kids' education funded? How are you paying the mortgage? So, you know, what would happen to those goals if something unfortunate happened to you, especially if you're the breadwinner in your household? So, of course, it's not that kind of thing we want to talk about. I think the difference between working with a company like Northwestern Mutual and Morgan Stanley is we're willing to have these hard conversations, and they are hard conversations. What happens if you die? What happens if you become disabled? Whereas a lot of companies that just do the investments, they just want to talk about accumulating money. I've never had anybody argue with me about accumulating money, but I have had people argue with me about buying insurance. And as much as it's not fun, I got to tell you, if there's people you love, you need to have it because your income is what pays for everything. And there are some insurance plans out there that can be investments as well. Like earlier, we talked about the whole life insurance. You just want to make sure it's with a mutual company so you're actually participating in dividends. So it's not just a pure expense. What I do with my clients, it comes down to budget. You know, what do we spend on insurance? What do we spend on investments? And then just figure out the most efficient path to go there. There are price points for every single budget. You don't need a lot of money to protect your income. Take your employer plans and then supplement after that. But you know, I don't think anybody on this call or Zoom today thinks they're going to become disabled. I don't think anybody is going to become disabled. But what I do know is if somebody does, game over. There's no way to hit your goals without an income or if your spouse stays at home and you die prematurely, I can't tell you how many GoFundMe things I see for somebody who died prematurely when they could have just bought a cheap term life policy, and then boom, everything's taken care of. So as much as it's not fun to spend your money on this stuff, it's the cornerstone of a financial plan. If you lose your income, everything we've talked about today is completely worthless. So it's very, very, very important. Then on the next slide, so this is disability. 1 in 4 will become disabled. The shocking number really is. Doesn't mean it's a permanent disability. I'm not too concerned with the short term. Short-term disabilities are typically 1 to 3 months. Some plans are 2 years. My goal is to make you a really good saver and where you can self-insure for the short term. What I'm worried about is that long term. I was in a car accident and I'm out of work for 2 years, or there's a concussion, or whatever. If I'm not at work, I'm not collecting a paycheck, and there's nothing going into my 401k, I had the same expenses as yesterday and medical expenses. It is just a nightmare. Employer plans usually cover 60% of your income. It's usually a taxable benefit. So you're going to walk home with 45% of your income. Big fan, sign up, take it. But if you can't live on 40% of your income now, you will not be able to if you're disabled, and especially if there are people relying on you for an income. So, what you should do is, until you can self-insure, you have a policy. Now, I have clients who they buy these policies in their 30s, and we're also building up investments and savings accounts. And when they get to their 50s, late 50s, kids are out of school, we don't need as much coverage. We reduce or get rid of the coverage. So it's not like you need to keep this thing forever, but until you can self-insure, you really need to have one or the plan falls apart. Jumping on to the next page talks about the group disability. I just talked about that. It's usually 60% of your income. So we'll just go ahead and jump on to the next page, which is life insurance. I've already talked a little bit about this, but when talking about protecting income, we need to talk about life insurance, because as with disability insurance, you have some life insurance coverage through your work, but it's usually not going to be enough. To really summarize the whole life insurance conversation, if you had $1 million of life insurance, you die, $1 million pays out, your family can basically take $30,000 a year without running out of money. So if $30,000 a year is enough to keep the household going, then $1 million of life insurance is good for you. If it's not, you need more. The way I come to that number is what we have withdrawal rate. The withdrawal rate is looking at your investments and saying, what percent can I take every year without running out of money? Because we have to remember the market's going to go down. Pre-2008 market crash, we thought 4% was a good withdrawal rate, safe withdrawal rate. We discovered we were wrong, and you don't want to be wrong at this. 3% is actually what you can take. So if you have $1 million of death benefit, your family's going to have $30,000 a year. So think about how much it costs to live, and maybe $1 million isn't enough. The term policy is $1 million, or whatever that value is, on paper every year. So now we've got inflation eroding our purchase power. So $1 million today has a purchase power of only $100,000 in 30 years. So you got to remember that too. If you have a level death benefit, this baby may not be keeping up with your expenses. We want to make sure mortgage, big expenses are taken care of, child care costs. So even if you have a stay-at-home spouse, if they go down, how are you going to go to work, pick up the kids? So I hear from a lot of people, when my spouse doesn't work. Well, let me tell you something. That spouse that doesn't work is very, very valuable. I've seen some studies where they say to be a stay-at-home parent would come out to like an $80,000 a year job. So you're at work, who's picking up the kids, who's taking care of the kids, who's cleaning the house? There's a huge liability there. College, if we die before we saved enough for our kids' college, how are they going to go to college? Pay off any student loan payments. Federal loans are typically forgiven at death, not disability, but death. Private are usually not. So you need to look and see what your own terms are. And then again, whatever is important to you and your family, a wedding or kids or inheritance or legacy, say to like UNO, something like that. There's some certain goals in there that are just personal. And it's just a conversation to have with your advisor on figuring out the right amount of coverage for you. So on the next slide, and actually So on long-term care, which is huge. And so I actually did a presentation, UNO, on long-term care. And the reason why we did that is the previous presentation I did on estate planning, we talked about long-term care, and there were just a slew of questions. I mean, this cost is through the roof. In our area, New Orleans, the average cost of care is $7,000 a month. I don't know about you, but I'm not interested in average. I want a little bit better than average. So, you know, I have a long-term care need. I have enough money for retirement. That's great. I'm married. Well, if I'm depleting my retirement assets to the tune of $7,000 a month for care, what's my spouse going to do? Did I have a legacy goal? You know, so long-term care plans are extremely important. Like I said earlier, inflation is about 2%, 3% long-term average. Medical inflation, you're looking at 5%. So this cost of care is going through the roof. When I started in business 15 years ago, there were hundreds of long-term care companies. There are a handful now. No company in the entire country will even sell a lifetime benefit. Reason is, we used to think that 50% of the population went on claim. It's actually 75%. And I don't know if you've noticed how low interest rates are. So insurance companies typically keep these premiums in safe, fixed investments, because we're not exactly sure when people are going to have claims yet. Like Northwestern's been around 162 years. We've got a really good idea on when you're going to die. You know, we've been selling life insurance 162 years. We have stats on stats on stats. Long-term care is just so new. So making sure there's a plan out there. And a lot of insurance companies, these premiums are through the roof, but we're trying to work on that. And we're manufacturing new products to make it more affordable. So it's an important conversation, because again, you know, if you think you have enough money for retirement and then you have long-term care, you could deplete that bucket super quick. Medicare is going to pay for the first 90 days in full, and then they will pay a percentage of the next 10. So you have about 100 days covered. But you know, if it's a physical ailment, you're probably going to need care for 5 to 6 years. If it's cognitive, like Alzheimer's, we could be talking substantially longer than that. Medicaid, there's only a few beds, my understanding, in the state. You do not want to qualify for Medicaid. Medicaid will give you great care. I do not doubt that at all. You just do not want to qualify for, because if you're single, you can have 2,000 of assets. If you're married, you can have 3,000. And yes, your wedding ring is considered an asset. If you're going to try to get money out of your estate to qualify, they've already thought about that, and there's a 5-year look back. So unless you know exactly when you're going to need long-term care, I wouldn't play around with the federal government, because if you move assets out of your estate in order to qualify in that 5-year period, you are going to get penalized, and that penalty is months without financial help. So it's a really good idea to look and see how much can you self-insure and how much should you really be protecting. That being said, we'll jump on to the next slide. And, you know, I've already talked about 5% inflation, but this slide will just give you some of the numbers. You know, someone turning 65 today has almost a 70% chance of needing care. So these charts are showing you what the cost was in 2015 and what the projected costs are in 2045 for home health care, nursing, or assisted living. I would say the majority of my clients that buy long-term care insurance or a policy with long-term care protection are buying it so they can stay home, have the nurse come to you. All these, well, not all, but the majority of policies, if you can no longer stay home, transfer to nursing home, transfer to a facility. So you will be protected in any of those ways. On the next slide, we're talking about giving. So, you know, where would you like to make a difference? Like for me, I mean, UNO, boy, I mean, I pretty much had to talk my way into UNO, and here I am now giving my third presentation. It's pretty ironic, but I cannot thank UNO enough for the life that I have. Yeah, I'm the one who went to class, but they took me in, they gave me the strong education. So I'd like an opportunity to give back. Unfortunately, about this time last year, my father passed away. And my entire life, he and my mother told my brother and I, look, we're not leaving you anything, so you better just figure it out in life and be good. Well, about a month before he passed away, he looked at my brother and me and asked if we minded if he started a scholarship at his institution, which was Indiana University. So I thought it was amazing that throughout his whole life, it was, we're not leaving you anything. And then it was, do you mind? And so of course we started that scholarship in his name. So giving, you know, may not seem important today, but it probably will be as you get closer to the end. And there's a lot of things you can do today to give, even if you don't have a lot of money, because you can set up plans where there's some tax benefits. Like for example, an IRA, all this money is growing tax deferred, right? When you take it out, you pay income taxes on it. You can actually give your IRA to an institution, and then they'll be able to take that money without taxation. Life insurance is usually one of the biggest ways to go, just because, you know, what I pay in premium is significantly less than the death benefit that's paid out. That death benefit paid out is tax-free. If a charitable plan is structured correctly, then you can actually get some tax benefits today. So for example, you know, let's say I don't have that much money to give UNO right now, but I'd like to give them a lot of money when I die. Well, I can get a life insurance policy. I give my life insurance policy to the University of New Orleans. They own it, they're the beneficiary, they're the applicant, and guess what? They're gonna pay for this. But I don't want them to pay for it. That's fine. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give them this policy, and then let's say the premium is, choose your own number, $5,000 a year, $10,000 a year, $20,000 a year, $100,000 a year, whatever it is. I am then going to give the University of New Orleans that money, or whatever institution, that money that year. When I do that, that contribution is considered a charitable contribution, and therefore, depending on my adjusted gross income, I can take a deduction for that. So that's a way that you can get some tax breaks today. UNO is not going to get the money today, but then when you die, they will. So there's a lot of strategies out there, whether you have a little bit of money or a lot of money. If you're passionate about wanting to give, there's a way to make sure that happens. You just want to make sure you do it on a smart plan so it's tax efficient for you as well as for the institution. I hope y'all aren't hating me. I'm going super over here, but we are about done. The next slide, consider how giving fits into your plan. You know, I just talked about the money with giving with your money. We just went through that in detail, but don't forget, you can also just show up, you know, volunteer, be there. There's I don't think anybody out there has a hard time saying yes to receive and help. So volunteer in the community, volunteer abroad, you know, just contact organizations you want to help out. So typically time is not going to be tax deductible, like say, you know, life insurance or things like that. But just reach out and get involved. You know, that's just like we were talking about planning goals. The best way to do it is just dive in, just put your foot in the water. We got to start somewhere. Same thing here. A lot of people say, well, I'll do that tomorrow. I'll do that tomorrow. We don't know if tomorrow is going to be here. So I would say just jump in and get involved. On the next slide, we're really just summarizing. So again, we want to save money first and foremost. We want to spend, you know, we've got this one life. We have to enjoy it. Hopefully nobody gets hit by a truck today, but it's definitely possible. We want to grow, but we want to grow to where we're smart, where we have safe money that's going to be there, whether the market goes up or down. And then we also want to be tax efficient with our money. We don't want to take all the tax breaks today, because if taxes are up in the future, we've now put ourselves in a pretty bad situation. So we need to figure out the science behind all the different buckets for growing our money, protect our money, you know, life insurance, disability insurance, long-term care insurance. Your family will love you for them. Unfortunately, I've had a lot of claims, death claims during my career. Well, I guess one is too many, right? But I cry every single time, and it's happy tears. It's sad because somebody died, but I see the impact of the plan that deceased person put in place make things keep going for the family. And as somebody who's lost two parents, I can tell you the impact, it's real. And then again, give, you know, volunteer your time if you don't have a lot of money, but even if you want to give money and you don't think you have enough, talk to a financial advisor, because we can pretty much right size a plan for any single budget. And, you know, if UNO gets $1,000, I'm sure they're not going to be upset. It's about making sure your goals are made. So I've been looking on the side and I don't see any questions. So does anybody want to ask any questions, or have I gone so far over I've bored y'all to death? Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining. And it's my pleasure to be here. I know you guys are saying thank you, but thank me, but thank you. I just, any stock investment ideas, crafty. Not about to not bored to death. Thank you so much. I'd be happy to sit down and talk stock investments. I don't think a group setting is the right platform, as everybody's situation is different, and I don't want to give advice that'd be good for somebody and hurt somebody else. But I'll tell you, buy low and sell high. That's the best way. But again, I mean, my cell phone number is 504-232-7451. Call, text me. I'm more than happy to be a resource. I absolutely love what I do. So it's never a bother. And then email is jennifer.hyde@nm.com. That's nancymary.com. I'm seeing a question from Vanessa about recommendations for international students for investments. It's a little trickier situation. It's going to, I'm assuming you're international and in the US right now. It's going to depend on what kind of visa you have, or if you're a resident. There are different, the government has some constraints depending on, again, visa or resident. So there would be a little bit of fact finding, Vanessa, that I would need to do to give you advice on that. There's options. I would just need more information in order to give you that. Hey, Victoria. I see your hand went up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Francie. I'm with the Alumni Association, and I wanted to thank everyone for attending. This was, I mean, I have way more information right now than I ever thought I would. So I know I've got some work to do myself. Victoria, yes, I will be uploading the video probably later today, but I will send a follow-up email to all the attendees and people who registered and weren't able to make it. We'll also have that link on our webpage, unoalumni.com/virtual events, so that you will definitely get that link. Does anyone have any other questions for Jennifer before we sign off?
Thank you all again.
Yes, and thank you so much to Jennifer. This was a really fabulous presentation, very informative, and we really appreciate your time and your expertise. And we're very UNO proud.
Hey, me too. I'm even wearing blue.
Yay!
I hope everybody stays safe and healthy, and we'll get through this.
Definitely. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.